everybody, and welcome to the Dedicated Show. This is Kate Strashny, your host of the Dedicated Show and founder of Dedicated. Now, today we have a very special show where we're actually going to talk about knowledge graphs and Lego with Doug Kimball, who's the Chief Marketing Officer from Ontotext. Lots of great conversations to be had on this topic. I think we're going to talk about the similarities of Lego in general. If you don't know what Lego looks like, this is an example of some Lego. I've got some behind me. I'm assuming folks know what Lego bricks looks like. My kids have been playing with it for years, and I'm assuming folks here probably grew up playing with Lego as well. Now, as you're joining the show, one thing I'll let you know is we're doing a giveaway actually of this mug. It comes with 3 different pieces. We're doing a giveaway of this mug. You don't have to type in a hashtag. All you have to do is actually just ask a question, leave a comment, tell us where you're tuning in from. You could pretty much leave a comment on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter and say anything you want. It will enter you into our raffle, and then we're going to pick 2 winners. So I'm really excited to bring up my special guest of the hour here today, Doug, the Lego Man. Welcome to the show.
I love that intro. So yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm like, I can only do these shades for so long. So I think the computer is generally in this direction. So yeah, happy to be on this show, Kate. This has been a lot of fun getting prepared for. Doug Kimball, as you said, Chief Marketing Officer of Ontotext. Been with Ontotext since early November. Big focus on basically helping to do market awareness and drive leads, and ultimately have fun talking about Lego. And boy, this is getting distracting. So what it is we do at Ontotext is we are a knowledge graph company. And you will learn a lot about what knowledge graphs are and what they do and how you use them during this conversation. But what excites me about this whole broadcast is our ability to speak to knowledge graph technology, to speak to the value of what it does for organizations, how putting the different pieces together, the data, make these things come to fruition. I think you'll find that what Kate talks about from the color standpoint, you look at this border we've got going here, it's all about color and data and understanding and semantics. So I'm excited.
Yes, me too. All right, we've got our cool shades off here now, but they might come back on when we're doing the giveaway. And I see folks are already joining us. Now, Doug, how did you end up at Ontotext? What happened?
It was an interesting story. I had a couple opportunities show up to me, and the former CEO of a company I used to work for made a recommendation there. I took a look at it, and I've been around data management in a lot of different incarnations over the years. So as I understood what it was that the knowledge graph technology does and provides from a foundation standpoint, I'm like, this is pretty cool. So I went through the whole interview process, and apparently they liked something they saw in me, and here I am. It's been an interesting journey. The company is based in Bulgaria, a place I'd never been to before. So I've now been to Bulgaria 5 times in less than 7 or 8 months. So it's
really that frequent. What are you doing there, man?
Yeah, I asked myself the same. A lot of meetings, a lot of stuff. Doing videos, doing recordings. I just kicked off. We had our first global field kickoff about 4 weeks or 3 weeks ago. I ran that and put that together. So I'm a big believer in remote work, but there's also time you've got to be in the same place with the same person at the same time to make it successful. So, but it's been a lot of fun journey.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been fun. And I see you got some of your old friends in here. Let's see, Scott Taylor. I think you know that guy.
Oh yeah, from a while back.
Yes, great to see everyone joining. Just a quick reminder, so we are doing a giveaway later throughout the show. You don't have to put a special hashtag. You just have to comment, ask a question for Doug. It could be about Lego, about knowledge graphs, about Ontotext, about the meaning of life. Doug is here to tell us about everything. I can't wait to hear it all. Now, before we get into it, Doug, I know you had a question for the audience. So
sure. And you can't use Google to answer this question.
Or ChatGPT.
Or ChatGPT, or any of those smarter AI tools that make our lives easier or more confusing.
All right. So who do you guys think is the world's biggest tire manufacturer? Let us know in the chat. We're going to be reviewing it. We'll keep this this question up for a bit because, Doug, when you and I first started talking, we were talking about knowledge graphs and how we wanted to do a live show together. And, you mentioned that you sometimes talk about Lego, and I'm like, oh my God, I love having fun on these shows. Not,
Right.
I love learning and having these great conversations and meeting people and engaging and giving back to the community, but having fun just makes it better for everybody. And you mentioned you use Lego. I'm like, okay, we've got to do something with this. So I wanted to ask, what's the story behind that? How did this begin?
You said the first part, it's fun. We work very hard in our daily life, and we got to have fun at the same time. But when I look at Lego and I look at the comparisons to data, it starts to become, at least to me, very obvious, because a piece of a Lego by itself isn't doing much like data. And when you start to bring Lego together, there's all the different ways you can connect it, you can use it, you can reuse it, you can create a whole structure, get halfway there, go, no, I need to change things and rebuild it. Much like data, we start bringing more pieces in, you can start to do more things with it. And it just, to me, it was just looked at as a way to tell the story a bit differently. And I'd seen other examples. I'm not the first person to talk about it. I won't try to take that away. A lot of people have talked about it, but it's just that idea that you can organize your Legos, you can classify your Legos. My son, I was pulling Legos out to be prepared for this show, and I'm looking at these two huge bins of Legos that he has got organized and classified in bags. He's got a big box of one color of Lego, big box. But it really starts to look at, that's what we do with data. We have to get it, we have to organize it, we have to classify it, we got to figure out how it goes together, how it links, etc. So I just thought, let's have fun. I'm a simplistic kind of thinker. Let's make things easy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, before we look at the answers for the tire manufacturer question, is it Lego or Legos? Because I even Googled it.
There's a good lady used to work for me, is our gardening analyst, who slaps my hands when I say Legos. It's Lego.
I heard you say it, and I'm like, wait, I think it's Lego.
I got to back up. And we don't want to say Lego pieces. We don't want to say Lego. I will probably say it at some point. Lego, it's a Lego. It's just a Lego. Now, it's normal to say, hand me that Lego piece, but it's redundant.
Right.
So, but I will probably say Legos at some point. I'll probably say Lego pieces, and Helen Grimster, I apologize.
And folks in the audience, let us know if we mess up and say Legos. Yeah. Okay, so we've got lots of answers in here. We've got Pirelli, we've got Goodyear. Steve Broderick here from Alteryx says Lego. Interesting, right? Firestone. We've got Bridgestone. Lots of great Goodyear, Bridgestone. Okay, Mike
Goodyear comes up a
Lego.
lot.
Maybe some people have seen your presentation before, but yeah, lots of great answers coming in. What is the right answer here, Doug?
Lego. So a couple people got it right. So you can win my mug. Here's my mug.
Wait, let's compare sizes. This is not made to scale. Hold on.
Yeah. Lego is the largest tire manufacturer in the world. Now, they don't necessarily make the largest tires. They make the smallest tires, but they make the most amount of tires of anybody in the world. Just tons and tons of them. I got, some of my little vehicle I got back here. Yep.
Oh, there you go. What kind of car you have there?
That is I think it's a police car.
It's a police car. Okay, but do you have a taco truck?
I don't have a taco. Now I'm hungry. Thank you.
I've got an ice cream truck back there too. So.
Yeah. This going back to my son giving me all this stuff. I built a couple of things, and you got this nice little village you built back there. So yours is nice and clean. I just built a foundation with a structure. Don't ask me what it is.
What is it? What is it, Doug? Tell us.
Well, it's a foundation with a control tower, because control towers help to understand and manage everything. Yes, I'm making some parallels between data and supply chain there. But I'll be honest, when I was building this was very free form. I just kind of I had this, I started putting things together, change it out there. When I built this, it was with a kit, and it was with guidance. So we've got structured data and unstructured data coming together. See what I did there?
Yes, absolutely. And
this was much easier to build.
And I actually hired help for free. I got some interns to build the pieces that came with this, because I unpacked 3 bags of this, and I'm like, kids, I've got one project. They did it so fast. I looked at it and I got a headache. They were just like, okay, step 1. They went, structured data. They went step by step and built it really fast. They had fun.
They're smart that way. So that's where this whole concept came from. Again, it's just, I think there's so many ways you can tell a story. And since a lot of times we're trying to explain knowledge graph and data management technology to I'll just say upper senior level managers, they may not always understand or need to understand the crunchy details behind whether it's a JSON blend or SQL joins or blah, blah. Why? What's the big picture? And so I'm generally more of a big picture kind of person.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the why, when we talk about Legos, I guess for us it's building a comprehensive structure, because you said you've built something. I've got my pieces of a town back there, and then I know we'll get into this a bit later, but folks in the audience, think of this as pieces of a knowledge graph that I have some and you have some and other people have some knowledge or data, but when we put it together, we can't, because this is virtual, but theoretically, if we were to do that, it would become a lot more powerful.
Good analogy. I like that. And that's a big piece, I think, again, but behind the power of explaining that is that, again, Lego by itself, not much use. Data by itself, not much use. But when you start to link it and you've got relationships and you can see all those things come together, and you can start over if you need to. And sometimes we go through a data project, we're halfway through, like, oh, I just realized there's more data I need to bring in for something else. Oh, we need to change things around, because if you do your data foundation properly, you build the underlying structure right the first time, everything else can be put on top of that more flexible. Unless you build a really tall Lego tower, then it falls over and then you're embarrassed.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah. Awesome. All right, I love that analogy. I think you have some great slides that you've prepared. I know it's going to be a very quick presentation.
Yeah, I'll go through it.
So, guys, while Doug is sharing his slides, and make sure you pay attention, and also come up with any questions that you have that we're going to address after. So go for it, Doug.
Cool. Yeah, so I'll just talk about building your data strategy, the knowledge graph, and I'm going to go through this quickly because I'd rather have the dialogue is always fun. You've already gotten my question. I think most of you did a nice job answering that. Thank you. Real high level, what is a knowledge graph? You see I'm bringing the concept of Lego in there. A knowledge graph is basically a database designed to connect and develop relationships and focus more on the relationships between things as opposed to the things themselves. So understanding how to connect concepts and entities. And really the big power of it is when you put context on top of that, so that you don't just have a piece of Lego or a piece of data. You've got context that explains what that actually is. And you can use it as a database. You can do graph analytics. You can do it as a knowledge base, a lot of things. There's a ton of use cases for knowledge graphs. And if you've used things like Google or IMDb, I use this example a lot. You've used a knowledge graph, but we use it for drug discovery. We do it for customer 360, fraud detection. There's a lot of things go behind what powers what a knowledge graph can do. And again, I want to go through this a little quickly because the dialogue is just as much fun. There's a lot of reasons for a knowledge graph. Three of the key ones is really bringing together disparate data. So you've got all this information out there in your enterprise. How do you bring that together and give it some meaning with that context by using semantic technology to have that agreed to conversation? I already made this little joke about bringing structured and unstructured data together, and I'll show an example of that when I Lego shortly. But most important, at least in my mind often, is that single place to go, not a golden record, because that's always a different concept, but one foundation that you've got that you can find and share, access, and understand the data. Because again, Lego, like data, if you don't share it and can access it, it's just a bunch of data. So making it reusable is very important. So I made the joke before, one of the threads that, I'd rather step on a pile of data in the dark than a pile of data or Lego on my bare feet. But
I've been there, Doug. I've been there for sure.
You've been there. Yeah, it's painful. It wakes you up. I don't miss that. So you've got this big pile of data here, big pile of Lego, which even though you might have a plan for it, even with the instructions, now you got your unstructured and your structured data, it's a lot of work, but you have to have a plan to put it together, which goes to that foundation that Kate's built, that I've built. Make sure that you're putting together a plan. What is the outcome of your data initiative? Whether it be a project, a practice, but overall looking at the enterprise goal, how do you bring everything together, build it effectively with the next steps in mind? So when you're done, you've got this successful project. So you've built it out. It's good. You've checked the box. You've made your bosses happy. But what if you want to do more? Because ideally, you're using your data more than once. You're using it in a lot of different fashions. And this is where I really see a lot of the power of knowledge graph, especially when you look at what we call the resource description framework model, where you can bring in additional data and connect it with different knowledge graphs. You've got your initial project. You've got these nicely organized ontologies of data, by the way, the Lego there. And by bringing those pieces together, you create something even better or even different than you had before. So now that's the power. Whether it's more data, more Lego pieces, you get flexibility. So taking the big picture view here, so now we've built the one project, we've got that done, but other organizations might want to use or access or share that data. Take a data mesh concept, data fabric concept, where you're spreading that data across the organization, not just having the ability to bring heterogeneous data together, but to share it and get access out of it. That's where you're looking at the big picture of where is it we really want to go when we do our data activity. So the way I look at it is just build your data strategy right the first time. We want to get profound insights out there. We want to connect diverse data sets out into powerful, scalable semantic knowledge graphs. And if you can't do it with data, let's do it with Lego.
I love it. As long as you're doing it right with data or with Lego.
Yeah, as long as you start, you've got to start somewhere. And that's when I started building my project. I pulled out this little flat foundation. Yeah. I go, okay, I got to build something because Kate's got a really cool village. I've got a yellow base foundation. Where do I go from here?
As long as you have the foundation. And that's, I was, before we started the show, I was telling you about this. It's a piece that basically when I was at a Snowflake, I think Cloud Data Warehouse tour or something in New York City, I spun a little raffle because giveaways are fun. We're about to do our giveaway. And I won this Lego set from Snowflake. And, for them, they started with the base. Well, actually, my kids built this one for me too. But yeah, it starts with the base. And then you can sort of get creative in terms of where you place. They have different things. They have like laptops. They have, I think this is supposed to be a pie chart. Not sure. Or maybe just
a sliced grapefruit.
Right. There's like a little dashboard. It might not be as visible, but there's a little dashboard on that screen. So it's very creative, but it all starts with the base and just like your corner garage example, and then whatever that thing is you built with.
I wasn't really sure though. It was kind of an example. It was like a creative example of bringing data together, bringing pieces together. But that's again, you go back to why I use the Lego example. Mm-hmm. Is that I've got this structure that I built and you've got yours, and we could take the pieces from your village, build it into my foundation, or I could share some information with you to make your creation more powerful, more valuable. That's the example. Just Legos are interchangeable, and I know I gotta be careful. Data itself is not interchangeable, but it can be reusable when it's done right.
Yes. And speaking of data, I know you mentioned that each sort of Lego piece, let's say this, well, it's a nice round piece, is a piece of, let's say, data. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned during your talk that semantics matter and that we should be careful of like what we're naming things, what we're calling things. So tell us more about that and why does it matter?
Sure. Again, think about when you do a merger and acquisition between companies and you've got one set of company with this kind of data, one company over here, and maybe they bring in different pieces. If we don't have an agreed upon way of sharing that information that we can, have the right methodology, the knowledge put on top of that, it's going to be very difficult to be successful. Yeah. But to put that in Lego terms, and this is a true story. When I was a kid, I played a lot with Legos, and we had naming conventions for things. And yes, we were not geeky ontologists quite yet, but we were kids, naming conventions. So there was this piece here. I'll hold up the camera, and I used to call this a 2x4 because it had 2 dots and 4. Pretty complex naming convention. Had a kid come over to play and went to a different. We hadn't played with it for a while, and we're mixing Legos and talking. And say, hey, can you hand me? I think it was a red 2x4, and a red 2x4. And he didn't understand what I was talking about, and so this was to him was called an 8 because it had 8 dots.
Right.
Sense? To me, this was an 8 because it had 8 dots. Uh-huh. So it's it's a little example. Then you have different pieces like, well, is this an 8? Is that an 8 thin, or is that just a So you had all these
8 regular and 8 wide. Yeah, that's there you go.
So it was obviously I did not go into data management because of that particular conversation, but as I started thinking about Legos and everything and the semantics, that's where the semantics becomes so important. If I'm in the United States, and I say a 2x4. Yeah. I might think of a piece of wood that I use for framing a building, right? Which would probably crush my Lego creation and really ruin this whole show. So I'm not going to bring that in. But all jokes aside, it is important to have that agreed upon context so that when I say I need, Kate, can you hand me a 2x4? You're not smacking me with a piece of lumber. You're giving me the right piece I need. If I say a red one, right. We've got certain agreed upon construct. Red, colors are normal. But then you take this, you got your piece. You got your nodes and your
Right.
edges. So it describes what a piece is. You got ways of connecting it because you have the ability to have agreed upon connections,
Mm-hmm.
and you expand it from there. So words mean things. Language is very important. So the more we have a clear understanding of what we're trying to accomplish, and make sure I'm communicating that to you,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I see the power again. This power of semantics applied to data connectivity, data sharing, data accessibility.
Right. Absolutely. And then going back to your childhood, who won? Did you end up calling it a 2x4 and 8?
I don't remember that, honestly. I think I still call this, I have to ask my son if he calls it an 8, or if he probably just calls it a red brick with stuff on it. But
Because my kids do the same thing. So I have two girls, right? And then especially when my younger one was even younger, the older one would just tell her, "Give me this piece, give me this piece." But I don't remember exactly how she would tell her. She would just say like the little black one with the 4 on it, but she would count the totals, not just the sides. You were counting sides.
Yeah, and then who knows why? I'm sure there was some very logical classification reason for when I was 7 years old that I did that.
Yes, so absolutely. I think this is time for our first giveaway, by the way, before we get into more knowledge graph conversations. So folks who are just joining, I see some people are saying, like Christina just joined. She's been looking forward to this. Thanks for joining us. Okay, our giveaway for today is not a t-shirt. It's not socks. It's not like a little plug-in for your phone or whatever people give out. It's an actual mug, but it's a cool mug. It's not really branded, but it's a Lego style mug. Not actual Lego, but it's Lego style. I have to put that out there just not to get in trouble. So in order to participate in this giveaway, you just have to comment anything you want. You can comment Lego, you could comment Ontotext, you can comment Doug the Lego Man, whatever it is, just leave a comment. We'll do one more giveaway at the end, so your comment will still be there. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my screen and do our first raffle. Someone's asking me if it's too sunny. Yes, obviously. It's really sunny. Okay, we've got 25 entries now. Good luck, everybody. If you see yourself as a winner here, just shoot me a note on LinkedIn, and I will make sure to get your mailing address. Ooh, Dan Sanchez. Congratulations.
Well done, Dan.
It almost looked like it was Kristen for a second. Kristen, better luck towards the end of the show. Thank you for playing. Let's go ahead and remove that. All right, so we've got comments coming in. I'll take this off because it actually is pretty hard to see the screen.
It is. If they're polarized, it's even worse.
So Francesco is asking, what if an enterprise is well on the way of implementing a data lakehouse and wants to take advantage of a GraphDB? They would need to move data into the GraphDB with additional cost, latency, overhead, and so on. How would you suggest they select what to move and analyze in the GraphDB?
And again, I'm going to put I'm not a high level techie person, so I may not be 1000% correct here. So bear with me. But the way I've always explained and had it understood to me is you don't need to move all your data into the knowledge graph. Your data that you're using stays where it is, and you have the API connections to make that interaction with those different databases. That's one of the things that we talk a lot about. Is that a knowledge graph is not a rip and replace activity. You've already got multiple data sources, structured, unstructured, semi-structured data. It stays where it is. In order to create all that, you then go bring it through the knowledge graph so that you get that information loaded into that. You layer your ontologies on top of that to provide that knowledge that understands, relative to your particular business, to understand that. One of the cool things about the knowledge graph then is it allows you to develop reasonings or inferences. So it makes connections between things. So my short answer is I don't think that you have to move anything into a graph database or into GraphDB. You use GraphDB to connect to your various data sources to make those connections across your knowledge graph.
Okay, thank you for that. We've got another question here from Mary Beth. This is around, I guess we could touch on dirty data and how that impacts the performance of a knowledge graph. So the question here is, how do you keep your displayed Lego clean and dusted, right? So I don't clean my Lego. I think eventually I'll just give it away or throw it out. I don't know if you have a method. Do you use a compressed air can or a Swiffer duster?
I go back to my son again. He actually, before he packaged all those Legos up, he actually washed them off.
Wow.
So because he did build a lot of creations. He would put them up there with a whole big display panel, and he took a feather duster to them.
Okay. Okay. Good to know.
But
And
he
now,
cleaned them off because to make your parallel, he cleaned them off before he put them away because again, you don't want dirty data, dirty Legos going in to the final creation. Like what I took out was nice and clean.
right, exactly, because I guess the whole garbage in, garbage out, or as Scott Taylor says, goodness in, goodness out. We want to make sure that what we put in the knowledge graph is of
Right.
a good quality.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what we're seeing is just not going to make much sense, right?
Yeah. You don't get improved analytics with a knowledge graph with bad data. It's just you'll get worse answers quicker.
Right.
That's
Okay.
horrible English, probably, but
So, it's okay. I wasn't going to say anything. English is my second language, so I wouldn't even know. Going back into just knowledge graphs in general, which industries have you seen really doubling down and seeing the bigger impact when they're using knowledge graphs?
good one. Um, Anybody can benefit. Well, I'll say that any industry, but we see financial services and banking being a very key one because
Mhm.
because of the ability to make those inferences and those connections I talked about with the relationships, understanding and identifying fraud opportunities or fraud activities is huge because it can make the connections and then draw more discussions. Like, have you thought about this? You see these things. Financial services, banking, life sciences, and healthcare are very popular. If you look at things like what they call target discovery or drug discovery, finding new formularies, instead of having to go through and read thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of medical literature, using Knowledge Graph can do text analytics, go through and find interactions or find allergies or find uses and make all these different connections, understand how to bring a drug formulary to market quicker. So that's another great example we've seen. I mentioned banking. Customer 360 is one of the ones I see as really powerful because if you look at the different ways you can connect a product that you're selling to somebody to all the different attributes that might be important to them. Maybe you're looking at allergens. Maybe you're starting to get into, if you're in in Europe, the digital product passport concept. Understanding all the different things that go into what makes this product saleable or potentially could impact somebody from a regulatory and compliance standpoint, having the ability to have all those connections is critical. But we've got use cases in manufacturing. We do a lot with auto manufacturers, for example. We've got really cool use cases that are coming out of that. They're using our technology to help them to bring their products to market faster and understand interactions between materials. So there's a lot of really neat stuff.
Wait, did you just say auto manufacturers?
Auto manufacturers, yes.
What about do they work with tires? I mean, do you have one of those tire companies? I had to ask.
That large company that makes all those really cool stuff, not yet one of our clients, but I think that would be just to me a really neat use case. But I bet you've got an AI tool you could show towards the end that people should stay tuned to that ties Lego AI. I'll stop there.
Oh, yeah. That's a good teaser. We do have a very short video clip to play towards the end in about like 15, 20 minutes. So if you hang around, you might win a mug and you'll see a cool little AI Lego video. So it looks like knowledge graphs benefit many different industries and sectors and companies, and they're great. But I'm assuming that there are challenges and obstacles that you might step on, like a sharp Lego on your feet along the way. So what are some of those challenges and how do companies overcome them?
I think education seems to be one of the biggest obstacles we're finding. Knowledge graphs have been around for 20 years and 20 plus years, but it's really just now in the last couple of years coming more into the mainstream. So it's more of what is this? Why do I care? What will this do for my business than anything else? The how to, once you get to the how to, you've gotten past all that. I think there's also some hesitation. Well, do I need to rip and replace, change things out? I've already got existing infrastructure investments. This goes underneath that, so it does not change anything. It actually improves everything. Beyond that, that seems to be the biggest things we run into. Education. Should I use this format of knowledge graph? This type of knowledge graph? Do I have the knowledge to put on top of that? That's where again we talk about the ontologies and the taxonomies to organize and understand your data. But what we always tell people is just find a couple of key use cases. What is it you're being most challenged with? Are you trying to connect disparate data? Are you trying to have a main information point for your information? Do you need a de facto organization of all your pieces? Are you doing graph analytics and want to ask complex questions? Are you trying to do, recommender systems or chat bots in a better fashion?
Right.
What are those use cases? And then back into that and say, well, how do we start to solve for that?
Right. And, you mentioned education as the first obstacle, and hopefully we're doing our part here in educating the community. If you've never heard of a knowledge graph, hopefully now you have a better understanding and you're having fun with our Lego comments along the way. We had a question here, let's see, from Sorab. It's asking, what tool can we use to create canonical models? And full disclosure, I had to Google canonical models. I'm not sure how technical you are.
Yeah, I may not be able to answer that one. I know there has been some use of the large language models to help to build knowledge graphs and the models more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, I will run out of much intelligent steam on that one. So, sorry, I'm sorry I can't give you a full answer to that one. I'm happy to have somebody talk to you, though.
Yeah. I Googled and it honestly didn't help me too much. So So I think we can shift into success stories, right? So at Knowledge Graph, can you share maybe either some use cases, case studies, or success stories that you particularly like where Knowledge Graph sort of made a difference to the business, to the company?
Yeah, I think one of the easiest one is one of our clients, Novacenta. They are a biological company, so they're bringing formularies to market. And by using the knowledge graph, the Ontotext knowledge graph solution, they've been able to shorten all of their developmental cycles for how do we do the research, how we dig into that, shorten that by, if I remember correctly, up to 1/3 of the time. And so when you put that into real dollar amount, obviously bringing drugs to market and selling those, because it's a very profitable business, the longer it takes to do so, the longer time before they can start seeing return on investment. So they've been very, very happy with us. We've got another client of ours based in Europe who has used us for almost 12 years now to serve up individual web pages as people come on board to look at whether it's sports scores or things like that, to give them a very customized view of the information they're most interested in. And that's one of the things that's really exciting, because it's just basic text information fundamentally, but it's being pulled from the knowledge graph and making those connections. Well, hey, if Kate comes on, Kate might be interested in seeing these things,
Right.
because you have the facts about Kate, but then you can start making inferences about Kate and serving it from information that's personalized to you. That to me was just it's really cool example. But we've got dozens. I mean, helping a major television studio provide more customized, personalized content, to having the auto manufacturer deliver products faster.
Okay. Yeah, great. All great examples. I think changing the world one company at a time. There was actually a question that came in that I think might also be another technical one in terms of any use cases in streaming services using knowledge graphs.
Not that we have done that I'm aware of, and sorry, let me quantify that. One of the challenges with streaming is because of the speed of getting it in, getting back out. Knowledge graphs are more well suited for streaming services than relational databases because of their power to scale.
Mm-hmm.
There's ability to use in memory to scale much larger and faster. So yes, I believe the answer is yes. Using knowledge graphs is the way to go for streaming because of that speed, the speed and connection process.
Okay, thank you for that. So moving on to Ontotext technology, right? Can you talk a little bit about how folks use Ontotext to actually create knowledge graphs? Is there something that sets you apart from your competitors?
It's never easy to bash competitors. So I won't do all there. I'll just say what sets us apart in general is the style of database we use. It's called Resource Description Framework. I mentioned that briefly. If you want to get really technical, it creates what's called triples. So subject through predicate. Won't go into detail there. The basics of it is it allows you to take your data, populate your knowledge graph, layer the ontology on top of that, which gives you information. And as you start to put more and more data into that, your knowledge graph becomes more powerful. What stands us out between us and other folks is not just the database. When the technology is fundamentally, it's very similar across a lot of these things, just slight differences. It's how we support it. It's how we demonstrate the uses of it. It's how we then handhold through the process to make sure that not only are you solving for that particular use case, but you're thinking about what are the steps beyond that. I mean, we have 20 years of experience of doing this with this kind of technology, helping the process of here's how you load the data, here's how you get it set up for it, here's how you get it ready, here's how you then use it, but also the business process behind that. How do you structure good queries? How do you get the most analysis out of your data? That's one of the things I think has set us apart. I mean, we're different from a relational database, so we have to help people understand how to use that differently as much as here's the technology.
So you mentioned creating better or structured queries. What do you do exactly when you're working with clients? Do you actually sit down there and say, okay, this is your query, and I think you should do it this way, or?
And then a lot of it's about asking questions. And we work with obviously consultants and implementation companies who have experience, but it's as much about them helping to understand how to ask more powerful questions. I can, instead of just being say, who is Kate and where does she work? I can ask more free form questions. And this is where you bring in things like, and I'm not going to go into detail, but large language models as an example, using knowledge graphs to train large language models to give you that more flexibility that you can ask more natural language type questions. It's really about teaching people, because again, knowledge graphs are, if you've not used them and encountered them, they're confusing until you understand them. But once you start to realize that the knowledge graph can help you make these connections between things the same way our brain does.
Right.
I mean, if I look at you and I say, hey, Kate, tell me about Paris, you might automatically have a certain connection to Paris that you bring up in
Eiffel Tower. That's all I can say.
Tower, right? I might think of my daughter, because my daughter went to Paris with my mom a couple of years ago. So it depends where we go. But being able to ask those questions is what we help train people to understand is what is that use case you're trying to get to, and how do you get to by asking these types of questions and realizing that the power of knowledge graph supports that.
Okay, very helpful. Thank you. We've got another question here from the audience. Is there a difference between a knowledge graph and an ontology?
Yes, ontology. Now, a knowledge graph by itself is just basically a boring, empty database. So, and a knowledge graph by itself does nothing. Once you bring the pieces in, the Lego or the data, once you bring the data in there, now you've got a knowledge graph populated with the data. But data by itself, without the context, the semantics I talked about, is also not that much value. So now you layer an ontology on top of that, and there's a lot of ontologies out there that are usable or free that you can bring in, like FIBO, the Financial Information Business Ontology. You bring that, basically, I'll call it pre-canned, and forgive me for terms, pre-canned knowledge, and that you overlay on top of your knowledge graph that you built in that data, and now it starts to add intelligence to that data so that you can classify it. An easy example that I will use is like a military organization. You've got a military organization who's got, at the very top, you have the senior person and all these different people that are underneath that and all the different branches. And maybe you want to track where these people are by the equipment that they're using, by the location, by the need. And you have to have that military ontology, that knowledge of what those specific terms, characteristics, attributes are for that data to be useful. Otherwise, it's just a reporting tree.
Right.
It doesn't tell you anything. It just tells you he's there, she's there.
So, you mentioned bringing data together, and I know you have your corner garage and your structure there, and I've got my daycare and my school and my taco truck and ice cream truck there. Let's say we're bringing all that together to build this great knowledge graph. If, for example, I have this random piece of data that doesn't really fit in to a town, right? It's just kind of like I guess you could say office space, but let's pretend it doesn't really fit in, and we can call it dirty data or maybe irrelevant data. Is it best practice to include this piece of data or this piece of Lego into that main knowledge graph, that broad, I guess, group of all the pieces? Will that muddy the waters, or is it better to have that in there just in case somebody has a question about this data piece?
I mean, if it's dirty data, no, we don't want to bring it in. But if it is, let's call it unrelated or unstructured.
Unrelated, yeah, that's a good
unrelated data.
Yeah.
And you may that at the point you bring it in, you may not have a relation or a connection behind it. But if the knowledge graph has been populated with a lot of data, a lot of information on the ontologies, it may go through and find an inference in there and say, oh, this data is actually related, but could be related to something else, and make a suggestion. So not that you want to pour all of your data just willy-nilly into a knowledge graph, but generally, the more data and the more insights you add to that, the deeper the information you can get back out of that. That's what we talk about structured data. Structured data is easy. Again, easy. Unstructured data, like text files, there's thousands and thousands of PDFs in any average organization that are just sitting there with a bunch of great information. Or like I talked about Malcolm Hawker about log files. Log files get run. They're textual bits of information. But if you don't access them that bring that in, how do you make that connection? So it may be unrelated data. This log file may be an unrelated piece of data until you bring it in. You realize that this machine keeps failing on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. And that's when Bob runs this massive, data load. Oh, and it starts to make those connections. So data to be powerful should have relationships. That's what knowledge graphs are so key on.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. I had to put my glasses back on because of this comment, and Scott's here, so he's so bright. He's asking, how does a knowledge graph work with master data management?
Never heard of that. What is this?
Never heard of it, right? It's like a foreign concept. MDM. Is he trying to say M&Ms, like the candy, or?
So meta device management. Oh, so meta. Sorry, I'm being silly. Sorry.
I know.
To do it properly, the way I come from that background. A knowledge graph should be part of an MDM instance. In other words, you got your ability to bring in these different golden records, bring them all together, but there's not that same kind of ability to make inferences and those relationships that MDM has. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give my wife a shout out because I was having this conversation with her trying to explain what I do, and she's great at this. And she said, well, how's this? MDM is like the letters of the alphabet, but a knowledge graph is like a sentence because it brings together the letters to make sense.
Oh, wow.
I just stopped. So we're changing jobs. She's taking over my job. But so to answer your question, Scott, it's a good setup. Data, again, by itself, we have the agreement that the letter Q in this and this and this are all the same letter. We have an agreement on that.
Yeah.
But just the letter Q by itself doesn't mean anything until you start to apply it into a use of something, like putting it into a sentence. It's a very simplistic example. I'm a simplistic thinker. But MDM, to me, done properly, should incorporate knowledge graph or graph technology in some format.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. I know we've got more questions that are coming in, but I wanted to sort of jump in with my own question because we are getting close to wrapping. We'll still chat, Doug. I know you want to go live for about 3-4 hours. You said
like at least. I left time to rebuild my Legos over here.
Yeah, so we'll have a whole hour where we're just building Lego. We're just gonna sit, get our Lego cam going.
Can you hand me a 2x4?
What do you have there?
You need to hand me a 2x4 piece.
Your 2x4, yes. So I wanted to talk about the future a little bit. I know every day I open up my phone or laptop, and there's just so much news coming out, like so many changes. We're living in an interesting time. But I wanted to ask, sort of, when you look to the future with the perspective of looking at knowledge graphs, what can we expect to sort of stay the same, and what can we expect to change over time?
I think what will stay the same is the constant need for data and getting stuff out of data. Again, and we've been around this business for quite a while. Nothing has really changed as far as we always wanted to get more data. We're not always sure what we're going to do with it. Mm-hmm. So I think that will stay the same. What is going to change is the technology that we utilize to bring it together, to query it, to make it easier for us to use and access. And then also the ability for technology to start teaching us some things back on the same side. I've had conversations with people talk about AI and is this going to take over the world? Is this Skynet? And I don't fear that. What I do fear with technology advances is people not always thinking thinking critically. That's mm-hmm. critically. So as I look at advances in technology, obviously we could use all the buzzwords and then generative AI, et cetera, Chat GPT. For me, it's more on why we are developing these things and what we're going to use them for and how they should complement stuff we're doing, not always necessarily replace.
Right.
And the easiest example I'll give is a dishwasher. Back, before dishwashers weren't, it was really thought of, they'd have these cartoons of robots washing the dishes, and making, your life's made so much easier because this robot's washing your dish. Well, now we've got technically a robot that washes our dishes, right?
That's true. Yeah.
But are you focused on the fact that, hey, this machine washes my dishes, or I now have a half hour to do something else because this machine is doing it for me? So it's how we utilize these advanced technologies to make our lives either better, faster, et cetera.
Right. Just a quick thing. If it takes you a half hour to do dishes, that might be a little too long. Just letting you know.
Big dinner parties.
Yeah. For that example, absolutely. I think that's a great example. We've got some folks, talking about your queue, the queue example we talked about. So first, Scott says queue is nothing without you, which is, my kids just learned that a couple of years ago. But John has a specific question on the queue. So if there was only one letter Q and multiple meanings of the word file, how does a knowledge graph disambiguate the latter case in a graph?
I made it read that like 3 times, John.
Yeah, I was going to say, John, if you want to refer. So you mentioned that there's only one letter Q, so this is
right.
back to their
very, very fair question.
Management
yeah, very fair question, and this is where, in non-technical, the way I would conceptualize and answer that question is, so we've got this letter Q, which is the piece of data is stored somewhere. So we have this agreed upon piece of data that this means this. We've disambiguated it. We've deduplicated it. It's this piece of information right here. The knowledge graph then should pull from that location where this correct agreed to file piece of data exists, pull that into the knowledge graph, making that reference point back to the disambiguated data to have the conversation from there. So that's how I would explain the difference between, not the difference, the process of doing that is you've got the one place where it's an agreed upon, this is what this means with no changes. And then you utilize that to have that data communication.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So we are getting close to our ending here. So just wanted to let folks know that you still have a chance to win this very cool mug right here. Don't miss out. You can actually drink coffee. So Doug thought there are holes in there. No, you can actually drink coffee. I just didn't have a chance to wash it, and it's not my time for coffee yet. We actually did a coffee show a couple of weeks ago. So this is like bringing it all together. So drop any sort of comment and we'll do our final raffle. And before we do that, we also, as mentioned, we have a quick video to play for you. So I'm going to go ahead and hop off the stage and we'll be back in like 45 seconds. It's a quick video, but it shows you, well, you'll see what it shows you. It has to do with Lego and AI, and we'll talk about it once we're back. 1 second.
Love it.
I love their slogan of teach your bricks new tricks. Yeah, that's really cool. So what are your thoughts on that, Doug? I know you're the one who told me about this.
Yeah, and the reason I love that so much, again, is it's making a practical use out of some of the conceptual ideas that I throw out there. It's just basically applying, artificial intelligence to scan a pile of Lego and make recommendations of what you could build out of that. And as you go through and you choose favorites, obviously it starts to learn from that model, and maybe you like to have these kinds of suggestions more than others. But that to me is it's an easy example of how using data effectively, applying machine learning and AI on top of that to bring your data together. You can get, I talked about recommendation engines before. I talked about chatbots. I talked about Customer 360. This is all part of the process but you have to get your data organized and laid out and connected and drive those relationships before you can really do that. Otherwise, it is just that pile of disconnected pieces.
Colorful pieces.
Colorful pieces. That's important.
Color is important.
Yes.
All right. So are we ready for our final giveaway before we wrap up?
Are you sure we don't want to do the giant mug I've got?
Let's see. Guys, vote. Which mug do you want? Kate's mug or Doug the Lego Man's?
Yeah. This is the mini espresso.
Yeah, you can't really. Can you pour something in there? Does it have like a?
I think the surface tension might actually stop it from happening. I'm not sure.
That's fine. All right, so we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna share this. So congrats again to Dan. We're gonna draw. We're gonna draw again. Yeah, it shows the prior winner. People get excited, like, "Oh, I won 2 mugs." No, it's not win 2 mugs, Dan. Let's see who our second winner is. Oh, I saw Scott flicker over there. And the winner is Sheena. Congratulations, Sheena. Just send me a note on LinkedIn. I'll get your address and we'll get you a mug. All right, let's remove that. Yes, people are really, we're getting some good feedback here on the Lego analogy. So folks are in here. Scott's still here. And Sarah said it could be an espresso. So.
Yes.
Oh my God, I love it. Okay, yeah, see, we've got to vote for Kate's blue mug. I don't think people want your tiny little red.
I understand. It's this might be keep me awake for like an 8 seconds of coffee.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't work for me. Okay, so as we wrap up, Doug Kimball, just so people know your actual name, where can people go to learn more, to explore more about Ontotext, about you? What's the best platform?
2 platforms. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. Obviously, I love connecting there. Follow us on LinkedIn at Ontotext, but also ontotext.com. On to TEXT for ontologies and text analytics, in case somebody wonders. Ontotext.com. We've got more case studies than I was talking about on there. Lots of information. Our job is to educate and help you understand why knowledge graphs are important. But happy to connect with anybody on LinkedIn, but I really encourage you to follow Ontotext on LinkedIn. We put a lot of information out there, articles, white papers, knowledge stories, videos, that sort of thing.
Yeah, perfect. And I'll drop a link to your LinkedIn company page to make it easier once we wrap up. So folks, follow Doug Kimball. He's the CMO of Ontotext. Follow Ontotext and definitely go to ontotext.com if you have an interest in knowledge graphs for your company, or if you want to just learn more, go ahead and do that. Doug, this has been one of my most fun shows ever, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the knowledge and the knowledge graph conversation and the fun. I really appreciate it.
And thank you to you, and thank you for all the questions that come in. For the technology heavy ones, I'm sorry I couldn't answer them better, but really appreciate the questions for a lot of reasons. It's nice to have the engagement. So Kate does a nice job of the show, so thank you for setting that up. This has been fun. Now I got to disassemble my Lego though. Yay!
Okay, now I'm gonna go clean up all my Legos, give it back to the kids because they keep wanting to play with it. I'm like, no, I have a show on Tuesday. Don't touch it. So awesome. All right, thanks everybody. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you at the next dedicated show. Bye.
Bye.